Mike Tomlin let the Steelers' offensive line have it after the poor performance they had in their second preseason game against the Jaguars. And in the locker room on Monday, they were all ready to accept, hey, we were terrible. We have to be better. We did a lot of locker room interviews here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to play some of those for you, give you my thoughts on how they've responded to the challenge of Mike Tomlin, and talk a little bit of safety talk and a little bit about a trade that could help the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. I'm Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, including our bonus episodes when we bring them out. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. All right, so went over this a lot in the last two episodes, especially the one that was the bonus episode Sunday and our Monday episode. The offensive line was bad with a capital B and not Michael Jackson bad. But when we got into the locker room Monday and we got a chance to talk to some of these players, they were all pretty much of the same tone. Like, yep, we know that was bad. Mike Tomlin let us know it was bad. And especially Kendrick Green, who was the first one to tell us he even got singled out by Mike Tomlin in the player meetings. Listen to how Kendrick Green describes things here in the locker room. He was willing to kind of come out and say it, but you could tell he was feeling it from the roasting that he got in the meetings. Here's Kendrick Green from Monday.
Bounds and trying to work on, just really playing ball, playing stronger, playing a little bit more aggressive.
Did you get a chance to maybe assess your play from the second game? And what are your thoughts?
Just got to be better. Yeah, yes, I did get a chance to answer that first, but yeah, just got to be better. Me individually, us as a whole.
What's the mood of the group coming off a game like that, Kendrick?
Not good. Not good at all. Coach T had kind of put us up on the board. Me specifically, a lot in front of the team meeting. That never feels good. So.
What were they pointing out? Like, what was the reasoning for
going into the game? We didn't game plan on them too much, but one of the things Coach T did point out was, they had some pass rushers and they had some strong guys, to push the pocket, and that's what the challenge was. We need to meet the expectations. So we're gonna keep going to it.
You feel like you'll be game planning this week?
Maybe a little bit more. I don't know if it'll be full blown, but then again, I don't know what they want to do upstairs. I'm just gonna do what they tell me.
First exhibition, you guys at least were able to push some people around in the run game, did some good things there. Why do you think that dropped off in the second one as well?
Kind of miscommunicated on a few plays. Just then that comes with playing next to different guys, stuff like that. Even with the 2s and the 3s as well, but. And then also just getting beat flat out, you know what I mean? Man to a man. So.
Getting beat flat out. That is exactly what was happening a lot of. Even in times when Kendrick Green was in the right position, he was getting pushed way into the backfield, as were a lot of the other offensive linemen. But, that's something that, we were talking about, we were going to see some struggles from this offensive line. The question is, can they fix it? Now, I propose, the idea of signing a J.C. Tretter type of player from free agency. He's still out there. Granted, he's 31 years old. Typically, the Steelers are looking for guys in their mid to late 20s if they're going to sign a free agent. But this is looking like a bit of an emergency. But one thing that I said to our friends Wes Euler and Arthur Moats on the Steeler Nation Radio, the Blitz radio show, because we have them both on this show all the time. But we were talking about it, and I was saying the Steelers aren't a panic organization, and one thing that I always urge everyone every year before we get to preseason is to not freak out about the preseason, because what happens is that you get isolated and you think, oh, these 1 or 2 games or even just one game, it just means the world, and this is everything, and this is just how good these players are going to be. They won't get any better. And every year before, and I'm like, hey, we know this offensive line doesn't have the pedigree. We know this offensive line is not going to be elite or very good, maybe even struggle to be quote unquote good. But the idea is that you have a lot of young guys and you want to see them develop into better players by midseason so that they can carry you in the later part of the season. And it's something that I had to even remind myself, because I'm sitting here thinking like, man, they got to get rid of Kendrick Green. They got to, or at least get somebody so that they don't got to use Kendrick Green, because right now he's unusable if he plays the way that he did then. Now we'll get to Kevin Dotson in the second segment, because I did a full one-on-one with him that I thought was pretty interesting. But remember what I was saying yesterday about how the Steelers offensive line played. It wasn't that every single play the whole line was just getting crushed. It was every play there was one guy getting crushed and four guys usually doing their jobs pretty well. And that's what, Mike Tomlin calls popcorn. Got the chance to talk to Mason Cole, the center, who I think has been doing among the best of the group. I'd put him and Chukwuma Okorafor kind of on the same plane, like, not elite players, but at least being reliable most of the time. Here's Mason Cole when we asked him about what Kendrick Green said and about how they can fix things. Mason Cole.
Mason, Kendrick was telling us that Mike Tomlin had some not so great words for the offensive line. What did he say to you guys? How have you guys received it moving forward?
Yeah, as he should, right? I don't think they performed well enough, and we talk about all the time that this team is going to go as far as the offensive line, right? At least offensively. And we put a performance like that out, you got to bounce back and correct it.
He told us also that you guys knew, hey, Jacksonville's got a lot of talented guys up front. What were some things that maybe caught you guys off guard but helped you guys learn more things about yourself?
Yeah, obviously those guys are talented, but each week in the NFL we're going to face teams like that. The pass rusher in this league, it doesn't stop. I was just saying we got the tools to do it, and we have been doing it. We just, for whatever reason, on Saturday we didn't use them, so we got to get back to it, back to sharpening our tools and using the right technique.
That word technique got used a lot by the Steelers offensive line Monday. There was a lot of technique. I mean, everybody that I talked to, that word came out their mouths at least 2 or 3 times. And you get the sense that it's like, hey, they believe in their skill. They believe in their athleticism. They believe that they have the guys who know what to do. They just have to execute with the right technique. And I think that's interesting. I also think it's interesting how Mason Cole, this was also shared across the offensive line. Mason Cole, you heard him when I wasn't trying to give him an excuse or anything. I was just saying, like, hey, what do you learn from when you play a defensive front that's loaded like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who spent first round pick to get, top tier defensive front guys? And I wasn't offering, I was just saying, hey, what do you learn from that? And he was immediately like, we're not taking this as an excuse. That's not where I was even going. But I think it shows you that they're looking at this and they're saying, like, there is no excuse. We're not looking for this. And I think they're ready to kind of get out in front of that in case, someone tries to say, oh yeah, well, this is an excuse. It's okay that they played poorly. To them, it's not okay, because they have to go fix this. So I think there's some interesting components as to how they can fix this. Now, there's an obvious trade candidate that was getting talked a lot about Monday in Patriots offensive lineman Isaiah Wynn. I'll give you my opinions on that in a second here, because there's some merits to it, but there's also some questions to it that I'm like, I'm not so sure it would have to be the right price. But we'll also hear from Kevin Dotson, because if no other move happens, he's the guy that has to replace Kendrick Green. And I had heard some interesting things from him about his comfort level with his injuries that he's been dealing with his ankles and where he might be. We'll get to him in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our great sponsor, Athletic Greens. And they have a product called AG1 that I use every day, because sometimes I don't have time to prepare all the meals that I want to get throughout the week, do my meal prepping to get proper nutrients every day. AG1 makes this easier because they're getting me those nutrients all in one quick, easy drink that it takes about 30 seconds to make in the morning. It's helped me get better gut health, more energy, and an optimized immune system. And as an asthmatic, it's helped me breathe a lot easier. Now, I've been using AG1 for about 3 months now, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy or heavy to gulp down. It's just a mild tropical taste that I really look forward to each morning. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your recovery, focus, and aging, all the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop of one scoop of AG1 with a cup of water every day, and that's it. You shake it up, it's good to go. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. It costs less than $3 a day and contains less than 1 gram of sugar and supports better sleep quality. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. So before we get to Kevin Dotson, let's address the Isaiah Wynn question, because that's the obvious one that's getting floated out there. The rumors have been floating that the Patriots have him on the trade block. They want to get rid of him because they can't afford him. They're tied up against the salary cap. He's a former first-round pick by them in 2018. And he's on his 5th-year option, and he costs around $10 million, and they can't afford that right now. And typically, and you're thinking, okay, well, the Steelers could afford that, make some moves, make that happen, and bring him there. And it's like, oh, wow, first-rounder offensive lineman. That's what they could use. He's 26 years old. Perfect. Few concerns here. 1, Isaiah Wynn is a decent offensive lineman. I wouldn't say he is the tone setter that's going to fix everything. 2, he's a bit of a tweener. And not that that's a bad thing, but he's played a lot of offensive tackle, but he's 6'3". Now, if you don't know about offensive tackle size, you want offensive tackles to be at least like 6'5". Like they had more 6'5", and you kind of want to be a little bit longer. Like Chukwuma, Okorafor, 6'7". That's the range you want him to be. You want him to have the long arms to keep guys off of him. 6'3" is more of a guard size, but Isaiah Wynn's been better on tape at tackle when you've looked at him on the Patriots. But the other thing you have to consider with him, he has had injury concerns, and he didn't finish last season. There's been a lot of concerns when you read a lot about the hopes that the Patriots fans had for him. Every time it was kind of marred with, well, if he's healthy, it's good, but he hasn't been healthy. And I think that's a concern that the Steelers really have to have is, are you going to sign up a guy that's just you're going to have on the roster, and he's just not going to play? Kevin Dotson's been going through injury concerns. You kind of need to make sure that you're not bringing another guy that's going to just be sitting on the bench and just be dealing with injuries the whole time. But another body would be cool. Now, the other question is, what would the Patriots, give up, or what would the Patriots want you to give up in return for him? Because if this is a salary dump, maybe you don't have to spend too much. But then again, if there's other teams competing to get Isaiah Wynn, maybe you do have to spend a bunch. I think the Steelers' answer guard could still be Kevin Dotson, and again, progressing forward to see how this line comes together. I'm gonna let you listen to Kevin Dotson, and then I want to give you my thoughts on him and about Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, because a lot of people are coming after him. But again, let's listen to what Kevin Dotson had to say when I asked him about how he's feeling and what's coming forward for him in the next week.
Kevin, we know you've dealt with some injury issues in camp. How have your ankles felt? Like, you had some action to kind of test yourself out and find your comfort level.
I feel better. Definitely feel better about how I can play in game. A little more comfortable, not thinking about the ankle. So I feel like I'm getting to that point.
It's a lot to compound with. You talked about how you switched positions, and you were talking how you felt comfortable there. Then you're dealing with this injury. How you felt about just taking on those challenges and kind of combining it all together to get it done, going into a game?
That's kind of what Latrobe was pretty much just testing ground the whole time. So just getting used to the sides, getting used to the wear and tear on the ankle's going to be just to get a feel for it. So Latrobe pretty much did all that for me. I feel pretty comfortable in my preparation up to 2 games to be able to play, stuff like that.
Kendrick told us Mike Tomlin had a lot to say to you guys as a group after the game. How you felt his criticism was, and how you feel like you guys have received it going into this week?
I think it's definitely everything that Mike T ever talks about is usually valid. So, and another thing he told us was, he'll give you good, like you'll feel good, not good, but to learn a lesson and win feels better than losing and learn that lesson. So, we take the W, but, we know we got to get better.
You guys had like a lot of plays where it looked like, hey, everyone got it right, and there was just one person who just missed their assignment or got beat, and it seemed like it was coming from different spots at different times. How do you address that when you're like, man, like we're this close on this play and that play, but like this one thing wrong? How do you address that when you're trying to move forward?
It's something that it's individual by individual.
Right.
So we will individually have to pick up our game. We can't all get it right and one mess up. If that one person can get it, that's the decider of the game type stuff, So really, just everybody has to do it.
Gotcha.
There was Kevin explaining, a few things there. One, his health is a big concern there. But two, you hear him say like, hey, when Mike Tomlin says something, when Coach T says something, it's usually valid. And when he says usually valid, I think it's sometimes they know that there's times Tomlin's egging people on. Like back in the day, if you remember when Mike Tomlin called Mike Wallace a one-trick pony, it wasn't that he was, because he did more than one thing at the time, but he was trying to kind of motivate him and to make him angry, to prove him wrong and do more things. So there's times that Mike Tomlin does that thing, but that's part of coaching. You challenge guys in different ways and you see how they respond and see if that's the better way to draw out their best talent in them. But Kevin Dotson was talking about, getting better, just taking their time, focusing on things and individually working on their craft. I think it's important to point out something about Pat Meyer, the Steelers offensive line coach, because I saw a lot of people coming up and say, well, he's not getting the job done. Get him out of there. He's not good at this thing. And I'm just like, wait a second, guys. Mike Munchak didn't build the Steelers offensive line in a preseason. First of all, he inherited Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro and Marcus Gilbert and all the guys that made that Steelers offensive line back when he was with the team. He inherited, and then around those guys, those were 2 first rounders and a second rounder. All 3 of them were some of the best offensive linemen in football at the time. And people are going to look at it and say, oh, well, Ramon Foster was undrafted and Alejandro Villanueva was undrafted. And Kelvin Beachum was a 7th round pick and Chris Hubbard. Look at all those guys. Look at what Mike Munchak did with those guys. Yes, but he had anchor players. And I said this during the offseason. They needed anchor players in the offensive line, which is why I thought they should have gone a little bit in that direction in the draft. But hey, we're past that now. But they need anchor players to make it so that those other guys can kind of feed off of them. Mike Munchak would if I know a lot of people feel like, oh, if you hired him right now, he would fix this offensive line. He'd tell them everything that they're doing wrong. They then do it right and go out and be the best offensive line in the world. That's just not how coaching works. Mike Munchak has a good pedigree, has a good response, and when he has great players, I think he does pull the most out of them. But he's not just going to make magic with nothing. These aren't magic beans he's putting in the ground and it's turned into a beanstalk. It's just that's not the case with what Mike Munchak would be able to do. I honestly think that Pat Meyer, and this was my charge to him, or charge for him, if you're looking at an honest evaluation of how he does as a coach, let's see if he gets 1 or 2 anchors out of this season. Because again, all these guys are young. Mason Cole's like the oldest guy, and he's 26. Chukwuma, Okorafor, James Daniels, they're 24 years old. Dan Moore Jr., Kendrick Green, they're second-year players. Kevin Dotson, a third-year player. These are all guys that you're hoping that you didn't have to spend a really high draft pick on, and they can be anchors that you could say, all right, you're part of the future offensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're part of the future offensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But by no means should you expect this group to become some supreme unit that just bullies everyone all the time. Their job is going to be to kind of mitigate the losses, make sure the pass rush isn't too crazy on the Steelers quarterbacks, and give the running backs enough opportunities to make plays, as if to just say, hey, you're not getting blown up in the backfield, but we're also not going to be able to give you, 20 yards of being untouched. You're going to have to beat somebody in the hole and make that happen. And I think that's, again, why they went and got Najee Harris, because they knew the offensive line rebuild was going to take longer than just one off season or one preseason of work. And I think that's another thing where Kevin Dotson comes in. It's like, hey, you know what? He had a training camp. He missed some training camp because of injuries, but now's the season for him to say he's used to the left guard position now. He's switched back over. He's ready to handle that. And I think that's where you're going to see if Pat Meyer can pull something out of a Dotson, out of a Daniels, out of an Okorafor, out of a Moore, maybe even out of Cole. And again, I say 1 or 2 of those 5 become the guys that they can rely on, that become pillars that they say, okay, next year when they draft an offensive lineman in the first or second round, because I do think that's coming at some point, or they make an even bigger signing where they get a big name offensive lineman in free agency, then it's like they're bringing those guys who are going to be major anchors, and they're already around established veterans who know the tone that you want from your offensive line. That's what this year's about. It's not about in the preseason these guys being stalwart, just super offensive linemen that are crushing people. It's about seeing what they got, seeing what their strengths and their weaknesses are, which we saw a lot of in the second game. We saw a lot of their strengths in the first game. It's about seeing those, putting them together, and saying, hey, this is the game plan that's going to be able to the offense is going to be able to function with. It may require some more moving pockets to kind of protect the quarterback from the weaknesses of the offensive line, but that's what they're testing out right now. Make no mistake, it was bad, and Mike Tomlin let them know. Now we got to see how these guys respond against the Lions at the end of the week when they take on their last preseason opponent before the season gets started. We also want to talk a little bit about the defense in this show, because Terrell Edmunds had a really good preseason game. The more I go back and watch it, I really liked what he was doing. And if you watch the tape, you were noticing him kind of being very downhill against the run and kind of lining up with the inside linebackers a little bit. We asked him about that and, what the Steelers are trying to do with him and how Damontae Kazee is working in with him and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Trey Norwood. We'll get to that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about LinkedIn. Y'all know about LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the place that you go if you're trying to look for a job or if you're trying to look for people to fill a job at your company. As you're gearing up for the fall, the need to find the right people for your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders is vital, and it's heating up right now. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond, because there's the world's largest professional network on LinkedIn, and there's over 810 million people using it. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. I wanted to at least talk a little bit of defense in this show. I will also point out Mike Tomlin did say in his post-practice press conference on Monday that the quarterback position is not settled at QB1. Now, two things to read into that. One, that could just be Mike Tomlin just doing the thing that all head coaches do and saying, yeah, no position settled. Is this one of those things where they try to make it a smoke screen of who they're going to start so that that nobody knows what they're actually doing and no one can lock it. It's coach speak. But we do know that they like what they've seen of Kenny Pickett. Now, my biggest question is, how much of a sample size do we see of Kenny Pickett in this last game? We only got to see 2 drives. Really, one of them was just a 2-minute drill. I want to see how he does in that situation. And then that might determine just how long of a leash Mitch Trubisky has before Kenny Pickett goes at, can go in there to replace him. We'll see how that plays out. But like I said, I want to talk some defense. Terrell Edmunds, like I said, had 5 tackles in this game, was never targeted because he was really strong in coverage in this preseason game. He's looked good. Anyone that listens to this show knows that I've been a big Terrell Edmunds guy for the past 3 years. His rookie year was rough. His second year was some growing pains, but by his third year, I felt like he was doing a lot of the really good fundamental things and the detailed work that doesn't get a lot of credit for. And a lot of people were still just ragging on him because he's a first-round pick and he's not making all these interceptions like Minkah Fitzpatrick. But I think he was making some plays, and especially you saw him helping out against the run, which is going to be necessary with the way these linebackers are playing that are not named Miles Jack. But here's Terrell Edmunds when we got a chance to catch up with him, not just about what he's doing in the run game, but also how the safeties are functioning as a unit and what's made Damontae Kazee fit in so well. Terrell Edmunds from the Steelers locker room.
Saw a little bit of in that game was some 3 safety looks with you down in the box, Damontae back wide, and then Minkah obviously in center field. Is that something that you think can really help you guys in the regular season and something you could work into the rotation?
I definitely think it's a nice package, something that we can definitely build off of, something we've been working on. So that was our first time really getting it out there because Minkah's out there now, but I definitely think it looked good out there.
He's made some plays. How does Kazee fit into your guys' room?
He fit perfect. You know, he was a playmaker, and Atlanta was a playmaker in Dallas, so now he's just coming over here trying to help us out the best way he can. So just having Kazee back there, he's a veteran guy. He's a guy that knows how to play in the NFL. He's a guy that made big plays in the NFL, so he's definitely someone that's going to help us out big time.
You and Minkah have often talked about how you guys can look at each other and know what you're thinking and know and communicate. Where's Damontae at in that level as far as communication, understanding how you guys work as a team?
Don't take this the wrong way, but I think with Minkah being out, that helped Kazee tremendously. Just him getting those extra reps, him being in there with the 1 defense, the 2 defense, and really getting those extra reps. I think he finally now understands exactly what we want to do, and he went out there this past game week and he showed us exactly what he could do multiple times. So he's out there making plays and he's a playmaker.
You heard him in kind of comments. First of all, he started to say, don't take this the wrong way. And I was like, what's he about to say? But his point was hey, it wasn't where I'm not saying that it was good that Minkah Fitzpatrick got out, but we found a way to benefit from it. And that's something that Mike Tomlin talks about all the time. When a guy goes down, it's an opportunity for someone else to show that they're ready at that position. And that was Damontae Kazee getting a shot there before he ever really had a chance to get, acclimated to the team. That was his first real action, with live pads in training camp, and he did pretty well. And that was something we talked about all throughout training camp on this show. In fact, we had a whole episode dedicated to the safeties last week. And I think you saw a little bit of the benefits there. The Steelers did, only win by a field goal in this last game, but even when they were giving up ground, you saw that they were keeping the Jaguars out of the end zone. You were seeing Trevor Lawrence, who made some really good throws in that game, was able to extend the pocket with his legs and was able to make some really good plays, but they still didn't break as a defense when he was on the field. And Damontae Kazee was absolutely part of that. And there were several times when I was going back and I was looking at the all 22 for the film, you could see when the 3 guys were on the field, it allowed 2 guys to drop back, somebody to drop down. Sometimes the guy who dropped down was Terrell Edmunds. Some guy who dropped down was Minkah Fitzpatrick. Sometimes it was Kazee. But these are the early experimentations that I think Terrell Austin is going to be working on to make this Steelers defense work and to confuse quarterbacks moving forward. Granted, they didn't get to confuse much of Trevor Lawrence because it was a short sample size, and this is the early stages, I think, of them testing out what works and what doesn't. But you saw Terrell Edmunds getting active in the run game. He had 5 tackles. He was, being really aggressive in that. I want to caution anyone that thinks that he's going to just convert into an inside linebacker. Don't think that. This is just an extra package that the Steelers are able to do because they have these athletic safeties. But that is an encouraging thing to see that they're able to do that, because it's going to give them some flexibility that they're going to be able to work in coverage and to keep athletic guys on the field to work against the passing NFL that we are in these days. And I think what you're going to see over the next few months as this season rolls on, you're going to see more complicated switches. You're going to see sharper, quicker switches where these guys are more instinctual, and that's going to lead to more turnover opportunities, especially when Cam Hayward's out there, TJ Watt's out there, Alex Highsmith, who said he'd be ready by week 1. By the way, he hasn't played in preseason because of a rib injury, but you're hearing all these good things about these guys. If they can get back healthy, the pass rush will be there. I'll also talk to Larry Ogunjobi. We'll get to that tomorrow, but if they can get there, the coverage can be sharp enough with these guys as they're getting better. So I think it's very encouraging to hear what you're hearing from Terrell Edmunds, to what you're seeing from Damontae Kazee, and that Minkah Fitzpatrick's back there working the safety. And when the deep balls start to come in, when people start to get desperate, that's when he starts to kick in, and I think he becomes a big X factor for the Steelers defense. We'll talk more about that defense tomorrow. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter critiques. Listen to the Locked On Steelers podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, or watch us on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Also, read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette as I cover Pitt football, Pitt basketball, and all of Pitt athletics, the college team in town here in the city of Pittsburgh. If you want to help with the Locked On Steelers podcast, give us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts. Do both at the same time, and you'll get a special shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again for checking us out, y'all. We appreciate you. We're gonna have Tony Serino for a Tony Wednesday. It's still going to be fun. Y'all love Tony. He's going to be back on the show tomorrow. We'll have a fun episode talking about what more we saw at practice and the interviews we got. Thanks again for checking us out. Be back on your screens and in your ears very soon.